Whoever feels pain in hearing a good character of his neighbor will feel a pleasure in the reverse. And those who despair to rise in distinction by their virtues are happy if others are depressed to a level of themselves. Benjamin Franklin. I'm John Rose. And today I want to take a closer look at the 2-second dirty high. Now what I'm referring to here is what some people will say, misery loves company. Now I find that phrase fascinating for many reasons, because it's a lot like a lot of words that have many definitions. There are a lot of different meanings that people apply to that phrase, misery loves company. And a lot depends on our own perception. I've done a dozen videos on a personality test called Personalysis, and there are some personality types that just love company. So you could say X loves company. So when you hear what people think that phrase means, you're going to hear different answers based on other people's perceptions. But the main reason or the main purpose of that statement has to do with what Benjamin Franklin said, is that when people are feeling bad, sometimes the only way they can feel good is when they make other people feel bad. Hence the 2-second dirty high. Now I heard that phrase just recently by some guy, and I thought, boy, that really does explain what's going on, doesn't it? And why am I even talking about this? It's because when you're on the hero's journey, you're happy. And you're going to attract like minds. You're going to attract other people that are happy. But then you're going to have those unhappy people that are going to come and comment and say something negative about you. We have to keep that in perspective, folks. People are not unkind unless they are hurting. Most of these people are simply crying for help, although there's a small percentage of them that are literally psychopaths and they have no empathy. And they want everyone to feel bad. They swim in chaos, so they always create disharmony. But the vast majority of the negative comments you see in comment sections on YouTube videos and on articles or on message boards are coming from people that are just hurting. They're in pain. And to really understand this whole message here, we have to understand that misery is an effect. Cause and effect, remember, folks. Misery is the effect. And then there's a ripple effect where the effect can become a cause. That's the causal loop. And this is what's happening on our planet. We make mistakes, we create problems, and then those problems in turn create more problems. One of the worst problems we have is we have a dark side to our behavior, which is the reason why so many people are miserable and why they want company. The main reason why we are hurting and why we're suffering, folks, is because we stopped eating biophotons. It's really that simple. Biophotons are stored in the nucleus of our cells. It's how cells communicate. Without this cellular communication, we have chaos on this planet. We have a lot of miserable people trying to make other people miserable. And the trim tabs, you guys out there watching my videos need to understand how to stay positive, how to always consider the source when you hear something negative. Very rarely is it constructive criticism. In almost every case, it's coming from that person's perspective. And also in many cases, they're hurting, they're in pain. It's a disease, don't catch that disease. It's real important when someone comes at you from a negative, not to respond back in a negative. God, there are so many things I was thinking of while I was coming out here on this bike ride about how all these other quotes fit into what we're talking about here. And the one that I really like a lot is all communication is either a love and response or a cry for help. And the other one is be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a great battle. Unfortunately, some of those are instigating the battles. Some of those are financing both sides of the war. These are the psychopaths that create all the havoc that we are surrounded by in our society. They're the ones who own the media, the entertainment industry, the music industry. They can change our attitudes and our beliefs on values so easily it's not even funny. It's almost scary when you think about how easily we're brainwashed and taught to think certain ways, and we actually think it's our own belief. It's an original thought, and yet you find very few people who have any original thoughts whatsoever. So when you're on the hero's journey, folks, you have to understand the obstacles on the hero's journey. Misery loves company. Now, again, a lot of people are going to say, well, that's not how I look at misery, and I understand that. It's just like the words with different definitions. The people who are really friendly say, when I'm miserable, I want to be around someone. Maybe they can distract me and I won't be thinking about my misery. But what's worse is when you get two negative people get together and they want to share their misery. I oftentimes want to tell my students to stop. I don't want to hear no more. Shit happens, don't repeat it. To be wronged is nothing unless you continue to remember it. Confucius. So yeah, shit happens all the time, doesn't it? And it's almost like part of our social networking, almost, our behavior, that we want to, share those bad things that happen to us. No one else wants to hear it. And you don't need to relive it. And that's the important part, because when we relive a negative experience, we experience the same negative emotions that occurred when we lived it. So as I mentioned, there's a lot to be said about not dwelling on certain topics. And there's also a lot said about not burying our heads in the sand, because an unexamined life is not worth living. And most of us have a lot of baggage, a lot of garbage, or baggage, better word, in our childhood and our history. And many of us, we need to go back and revisit those with adult eyes. And one of the things I was thinking about while I was out on my bike ride was people who go to psychiatrists and they tell them all these bad things, and I was thinking, is that really what we want to do? Do we want to relive these bad experiences? Or can these other people really help give us some insight on how to look at it? Or can we figure it out ourselves? Can't we go back and look at what happened to us with adult eyes? Well, that wind's really blowing, but it's coming at me, so I'm hoping it's not real noisy. So, misery loves company, doesn't it? How else can that mean? Okay, another way we can look at misery loves company is that I don't agree with you, and I'm going to find people with like minds, and that way they'll reinforce my beliefs that I'm right and you're wrong. Not sure about that one so much. I went searching on the internet before I came out here to look at what other people thought that phrase meant, and sure enough, there were as many different meanings to that as there are people, almost. And a lot of it has to do with perceptions, once again. Are you a friendly type of person? Looking at the sunshine here, I wasn't expecting that tree to get in my way. I'm out here extra early this morning. Had to pick a new location because all my other locations weren't lit up. But anyway, I got a kick out of reading all these different people's ideas on what they thought that phrase means. But I'm convinced it goes back to what Benjamin Franklin said, the quote I started this video off with. And it applies to the hero's journey, because we're happy on the hero's journey. And when you encounter some of these unhappy people you're trying to help, they're going to try to pull you down. It's not like a bunch of crabs, remember, in that container, pulling everybody back down into the hole. That's what we are. And I've got to go back once again and emphasize what misery is. It's an effect. It's because we're sick and we're disconnected. We're lacking biophotons. So misery loves company because we're disconnected. We don't understand our suffering. We don't understand that we're all one. And yet, sometimes if we go complaining to someone about what happened to us, they can give us some empathy. So there can be some positives when we share bad things that happened to us, as one person pointed out when I went searching for this a little while ago. But in most cases, I shouldn't say that, in many cases, they're not able to bring you up, and you just bring them down. So there's a lot to be said about dealing with your misery. And I think there's only one way to deal with our own misery, And that is to take responsibility and realize that most of our problems are self-inflicted. That we have more power in dealing with our misery than we have any idea of. Of course, there's all sorts of types of misery too, aren't there? Or isn't there? And some misery just, no one can take that pain away. No one can take a heartache of death away from anybody. But we just got to keep in mind that love is a memory that no one can steal. How's that saying go? Death is a heartache no one can heal. Love is a memory that no one can steal. So yeah, there's a lot of forms of misery. And that type of misery, I think we should use our pain to inspire us and motivate us and feel our passion. Think about how many loved ones you know, friends you know, are no longer here, and they should be. They died of a self-inflicted disease. I heard a woman say the other day, her husband died of heart disease, natural causes. Natural causes. It's a natural cause, heart disease, right? Natural causes. No, that's not a natural cause. Very few people are dying of natural causes anymore. It's always because of a self-inflicted disease like heart disease or cancer. Of course, in cancer, it's mainly because of the treatments given to the people who have the cancer. Sadly, half the people who die of cancer die of a condition known as contagious. They literally waste away because of the chemotherapy they were given in the name of health. It's insane. So yes, there are lots of types of miseries. Some of them, hopefully time will heal. But the vast majority of the suffering on this planet is self-inflicted. And it's all because we're not eating our biophotons anymore. And it's not easy to just go from not eating them to eating them. So what's my approach? Let's bump up those biophotons higher than if we just ate them. Let's take a solid food vacation on juices. Remember, Dr. Fritz Albert Pop says that we're born at 43,000 biophotons, and that most of us are around 1,000 to 23,000, when we should be around 83,000. And a solid food vacation on juices puts you up to 114,000 biophotons. So what's the best way to deal with misery? It's to take a solid food vacation, bump up those biophotons, adopt a raw vegan diet so you're eating your biophotons. Remember that this is going to put a smile on your face. You're going to crawl out of a rut you didn't know you're in. You're going to take your life to another level in every area of your life, physically, mentally, emotionally, communally, or spiritually. And there are going to be these unhappy people that are going to want to bring you down. Don't let them do it. Be strong. Be courageous. Face those disappointments that you know are going to happen, realizing that it only takes saving one person's life to make this worthwhile. Even if you go out there and you piss 100 people off, if you can save one person's life, it's worth it. Think about it. It's worth it. Luckily, the odds aren't 1 in 100,000 or 100. The numbers can be much better, and they get better the better you get at understanding all of the pieces to this puzzle. Remember, on the hero's journey, you gather knowledge, you gather allies, and then you understand the obstacles. You have to understand that misery loves company. You have to understand we're in Plato's cave, this cave of ignorance. When we come out of the cave, we find the knowledge we're missing, we go back down in the cave, and we tell people to look in the light the way the allegory goes. And when people do that, it hurts their eyes. It hurts to become enlightened, doesn't it? It hurts to know that we are the enemy. Don't tell me to look in the light. What's wrong with you? Why are you hurting me? That's what happens. That's the ungrateful task we have on the hero's journey to how people come out of Plato's cave. It hurts some people to hear the truth. And of course, most people are addicted to their way of life, so they're in a denial to begin with. But there's no escaping Plato's cave. No man is an island. The individual cannot escape the collective. We can come out of that cave, bump up our biophotons, but as long as the vast majority of us are in this cave of ignorance, suffering in misery, needlessly, we'll never be happy. So we got to be courageous. We got to expect certain disappointments. And keep spreading the message. The most important stage on the hero's journey is sharing this message. Share, 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 share. You gotta let people know in the best way that you think they can hear this message that they are the solution. They are the hero they're looking for. And when these people can come to that realization, you know what's going to happen to them, right? That's right. They're in for a treat.